In 1908, a book was published with no author name on the cover, no publisher, no date, no explanation of where it came from, just a title, The Kybalion, and 7 principles that its anonymous authors claimed had been passed down, in secret, for thousands of years. One of those 7 principles eventually got extracted from the text. It was simplified, repackaged, stripped of everything that made it dangerous, and sold back to the world as the law of attraction, vision boards, positive thinking, manifest your dream life. That version is a product. What it was taken from is something else entirely. The Kybalion, a Hermetic text believed to encode the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, a figure so ancient that both the Egyptians and the Greeks claimed him, described what they called the principle of mentalism. 3 words: all is mind. Everything that exists in the physical world began as a pattern of thought. Every empire, every invention, every fortune built, it started as a configuration of consciousness before it ever became a material reality. That isn't mysticism. That's the oldest documented observation about how reality is constructed, and for thousands of years, the people who understood it didn't talk about it openly. They just used it. Let's start with the version of this that's actually backed by neuroscience, because this is where the modern world accidentally confirmed what the ancients already knew. Your brain has a system called the reticular activating system, the RAS. It's a network of neurons at the base of your brainstem that acts as a filter for everything your senses take in. Right now, your eyes are receiving roughly 11 million bits of information per second. Your conscious mind can process about 50. The RAS decides which 50. And here's the critical part. It filters based on what you've told it matters. This is why the moment you decide to buy a specific car, say a black Range Rover, you suddenly start seeing black Range Rovers everywhere. They were always there. Your RAS just wasn't flagging them as relevant. Now apply that principle not to cars, but to opportunities, to people, to patterns in your environment that could change your life. The person who genuinely, deeply believes they are building something, that they are the kind of person who succeeds, their RAS is filtering for evidence of that, for open doors, for aligned people, for information that's useful. The person who has decided quietly that they are not that kind of person, their RAS is filtering for confirmation of that too. Both are experiencing the same world. Neither is seeing all of it. What you call your reality is largely a reflection of what your nervous system has been told to look for. That's not magic. That's neuroscience, but the ancients called it something else. They called it correspondence, as within, so without. Now let's make this concrete, because this principle doesn't live in the abstract. It lives in your finances, your relationships, your physical presence, every domain of your life. Let's start with money. Andrew Carnegie, the man who built one of the greatest fortunes in American history, said something that most people dismiss as the arrogance of a rich man. He said that if you stripped him of every dollar he had and dropped him in the middle of any city on earth, he would be wealthy again within 5 years. People heard that and thought, easy to say when you're already rich. But Carnegie understood something structural. Wealth is not primarily a function of money. It's a function of perception, positioning, and the ability to identify value where others don't. Those are internal qualities, and they produce external results reliably, repeatedly, regardless of starting conditions. The people who struggle financially for decades rarely struggle because of a lack of opportunity. They struggle because of a deeply embedded internal story about what they deserve, what's possible, and what kind of person they are. That story filters their reality the same way the RS filters sensory data. They walk past the same opportunities a wealthy person walks toward and genuinely do not see them. Not because they're less intelligent, because their filter is calibrated differently. The Hermetic principle says, change the inner, the outer changes. Neuroscience says, change the dominant thought pattern. The reticular activating system recalibrates. Different languages, same mechanism. Now relationships. This is where the principle becomes almost eerie. There is a concept in psychology called the confirmation bias of intimacy, which is a clinical way of saying you consistently attract people who confirm what you believe about yourself, not because the universe is sending them to you, because you are unconsciously selecting for them. The person with a deep, unexamined belief that they are not worthy of genuine love will consistently find themselves in relationships that confirm that, because their behavior, their tolerance levels, their signals, all of it is calibrated to that internal story. They lower their standards without realizing it. They stay longer than they should. They read kindness as weakness and unavailability as depth. All of it is the outer world reflecting the inner one. Conversely, the person who has done the internal work, who has genuinely recalibrated their sense of what they're worth and what they'll accept, their relationships change, not because they found better people, because they stopped being available to the wrong ones. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the relationship between internal order and external outcome. He believed and practiced that the man who could not govern his own inner world would always be at the mercy of the outer one, and the man who could would shape the outer world almost inevitably. That's not attraction as a mystical force. That's attraction as a logical consequence of internal architecture. Now let's talk about something the self-help version of this law almost never addresses: the shadow side. Because this principle is not selective. It doesn't only amplify what you consciously want, it amplifies what you actually believe. And most people have a significant gap between what they say they want and what do they subconsciously expect. You say you want success, but somewhere beneath that, you believe you'll probably fail. You say you want a relationship built on depth and respect, but somewhere beneath that, you don't believe you deserve it. You say you want financial freedom, but beneath that sits a story inherited from somewhere, someone, some version of your past that says money is for other kinds of people. The law doesn't care about what you say. It responds to what you actually hold as true. This is why people who try the surface version, the vision boards, the affirmations, the positive thinking, often feel nothing change because they're painting over the architecture without changing it. The real work isn't visualization, it's excavation, finding the belief that contradicts what you want and dismantling it. Napoleon Hill, who spent 20 years interviewing the most successful people in American history, came to one conclusion that ran through all of them. They were not smarter. They were not luckier. They had an unusual relationship with certainty. They expected at a deep level to succeed. Not hoped, not wished, expected. And that expectation changed how they moved through rooms, how they spoke, how they negotiated, how they recovered from failure, which changed how the world responded to them, which confirmed the expectation. It's not a circle, it's a spiral, and it moves in whatever direction the internal architecture is pointed. Let's talk about the physical, because this principle lives in the body too, and this is the part that people feel most, but understand least. There is a measurable physiological difference between a person who carries a dominant internal narrative and one who doesn't. Cortisol levels, testosterone, posture, eye contact, the unconscious microsignals that other people read in the first few seconds of meeting you before a single word is spoken. Those signals are not chosen consciously. They're emitted by the body as a direct reflection of what the nervous system holds as true. The person who walks into a room believing, at a cellular level, that they belong there, that they have something worth hearing, that they are not auditioning, reads differently than someone who doesn't. And people respond to that reading. Doors open, conversations shift, opportunities surface. This isn't magic. It's because human beings are extraordinarily sensitive social animals who make decisions based on signals they can't always articulate. The ancient Egyptians called this ka, the vital essence that a person projects. The Chinese called it qi. Modern psychology calls it presence. Same observation. Across thousands of years, across cultures that had no contact with each other, something is being described, something real, and the people who understood it, Tesla, who spoke about resonance and frequency as the fundamental language of reality, Jung, who built an entire psychology around the idea that the unconscious shapes the visible life, Napoleon, who believed so completely in his own destiny that his certainty became contagious. His soldiers fought differently because of it. All of them were pointing at the same thing. The outer world is not the primary reality. It's the output. The input is internal, and the input can be changed. That's the real law of attraction. Not a cosmic vending machine where you think hard enough and things appear, but a precise, observable, neurologically verifiable principle that the inner state, consistently held, genuinely believed, deeply embodied, will over time produce a corresponding outer reality. In your finances, in your relationships, in your body, in the rooms you find yourself in, and the people who find their way to you. The version they sold you was designed to keep you passive. Visualize, wait, receive. The real version requires something much harder. Look inward, find what's actually there, and have the discipline to change it. That's the archive. That's what was always meant to be found here. If this is the kind of knowledge you came for, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Inner Archive, new video every week. The archive stays open.